Cause and manner of death now confirmed in the death of famed actor and director Rob Reiner and his wife. We are live in Los Angeles with the details. And in Ohio, a man comes forward after 24 years to say he witnessed a murder at a pond. Plus, the young woman convicted in the Slenderman stabbing response after going on the run. We have the latest since the manhunt. Now that the court of law has adjourned for the day, let's get right to Court of Opinion. Welcome to Court of Opinion. I'm Jenae. Thank you for joining us this hour for a live conversation, a space to air out the strong opinions and at times controversial viewpoints from a fantastic panel of experts that we have on deck for you. So whether it's the court's final opinion or the court of public opinion, we are exploring all of it right here. Let's get right to our first case. We begin this hour in California. The son of famed director Rob Reiner made his first court appearance today. Prosecutors have formally charged 32-year-old Nick Reiner in the deaths of his parents, Rob and Michele Reiner. This all happened in their Brentwood home on Sunday. Now, the Los Angeles County District Attorney Nathan Hochman, he made the announcement at a news conference yesterday. Take a listen.
Rob Reiner was a brilliant actor and director. His wife, Michele Singer Reiner, was an equally iconic photographer and producer. Their loss is beyond tragic. These charges will be 2 counts of first-degree murder with the special circumstance of multiple murders. These charges carry a maximum sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole or the death penalty.
Nick Reiner is being represented by Karen Reed's attorney, Alan Jackson, and the defendant has a long history with drug addiction and had been living in a guest house on his parents' property at the time of this incident. Let's get now to the brief arraignment that happened there in California earlier today.
Good morning, Your Honor. Alan Jackson, along with Caleb Mason, Elizabeth Little, and Mortimer Jackson, went on behalf of Mr. Reiner, who's currently present in court in custody.
Thank you.
Good morning, Your Honor. He'll be bailing for the people. Jonathan, for the people, Your Honor.
Thank you. And counsel, how would you like to proceed today?
Your Honor, if we could, I would like to ask for a continuance of the arraignment. I want to get it clear at this juncture. It's too early. We've coordinated with counsel from the DA's office, and January 7th, with the court's permission, will be a convenient date for us to come back for potential arraignment.
Thank you. At this time, I'll take a waiver, speedy arraignment waiver from your client.
Thank you.
Mr. Reiner, you have a constitutional and statutory right to a speedy arraignment. Your counsel is requesting that your arraignment be continued to January 7, 2026. Do you waive your right to a speedy arraignment so that your arraignment can be heard on January 7, 2026? And does counsel join in the waiver?
I join, Your Honor.
The court finds that the defendant has made a knowing and intelligent waiver of his right to a speedy arraignment, and that his counsel joins in that waiver. Matter set January 7, 2026 for arraignment in this department. Bail to stand at no bail. Anything further on the case?
Not by the defense, Your Honor.
Anything further?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Again, that is what happened earlier today. For what has happened in the last couple of hours, we have our daily wrap joining us from L.A. We have live on the ground there, Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas with us. Cody, and we understand you're learning that the medical examiner has confirmed cause and manner of death in this case.
Yeah, Julia, that's exactly right. Just now learning this within the last hour, as you just said, from the medical examiner's office surrounding both Rob and Michele Reiner's deaths. Both Rob and Michele Reiner's manners of death have been ruled homicides, Julia. So they have died at the hands of someone else. Also, both causes of death caused by multiple sharp force injuries, essentially saying that they were stabbed to death, Julia. And we also know they were both found in their Brentwood home by their daughter, Romy, but it wasn't specified where inside that residence exactly they were found. Now, you know, Nick Reiner is the one accused in these stabbing deaths here, Julia. He was in court today. We just watched a bit of the arraignment. He was there with none other than Alan Jackson, his high-profile defense attorney, who is no stranger to us here at Court TV, of course. Alan Jackson asking for that continuance of an arraignment to January 7th of next year. We heard Nick Reiner waive his right to a speedy arraignment. He sat behind a glass panel in court today. We have sketches of that. He was sitting there. All he said was, "Yes, Your Honor," when asked about waiving his right to a speedy arraignment. So we'll see him back in court January 7th.
And Cody, I know you've been out there now for 2 days. You've been digging into the background of this suspect in the case. What are you learning about Nick's? I know you've reported it that he had a struggle with addiction in the past.
Well, yeah, Julia, that's exactly right. As this case continues to unfold, we are learning that he has been very vocal about his struggles with addiction and even homelessness in his early teen years, beginning as early as 15 years old, doing multiple stints in rehab, up to 17 stints in rehab for his drug addiction. And he went on to co-write a movie, actually, alongside his father, now deceased, Rob Reiner, called Being Charlie, that was loosely based on his early teen years struggles with addiction and homelessness. Take a listen to him describing what that process was like making that movie alongside his father.
It really clicked for me because we didn't bond a lot as a kid. Like, he really liked baseball, I like basketball, and he could watch that with my brother, but baseball. But I just, when I saw him do that, and it was something that I'm interested in, I was like, wow, like, he really knows a lot, and like, it made me feel closer to him.
And Julia, coming into our newsroom now, we now have this video obtained by the New York Post showing Nick Reiner walking past a gas station just after midnight Sunday morning. Now, it's reported in this video that this is him strolling to his parents' home before the stabbings took place. It's kind of eerie knowing what we know now, seeing this video again obtained by the New York Post. And, you know, we're learning again more about his early struggles, his early addictions, his drug addictions and homelessness that he experienced throughout his teen years. So, Julia, clearly there were some struggles that may or may not have led to this brutal behavior against his parents.
It's certainly going to be the position that his defense could be taking in this case. There's also some details that have been coming out about what may have been part of a lead up. I mean, we're seeing that image that you just showed of him perhaps walking around before being allegedly at his parents' house. But what about prior to that?
Yeah, Julia, so we're hearing, you know, circulation about this party, this Christmas party at Conan O'Brien's house out here in Los Angeles, in which Rob Reiner and his wife Michele and Nick Reiner were all in attendance. Now, it's been reported by TMZ. According to them, Nick Reiner got into this heated argument with his parents at Conan's Christmas party Saturday. That would be the day before the stabbings took place. Rob and Nick got into a very loud argument, after of which Rob and Michele left the party. And people say they noticed Nick Reiner acting strangely after this happened. So, Julia, of course, a lot of questions left unanswered here that we will have to wait and see unfold as this case continues to develop. But we do know that Nick Reiner will be back in court for that arraignment on January 7th. Also, back to Alan Jackson. He did not specify how he became attached to this case, Julia, and he also didn't specify how those high-profile legal fees are getting paid either.
I just have a couple of quick words. First of all, and most importantly, this is a devastating tragedy that has befallen the Reiner family. We all recognize that. Our hearts go out to the entire Reiner family. There are very, very complex and serious issues that are associated with this case. These need to be thoroughly but very carefully dealt with and examined and looked at and analyzed. We ask that during this process you allow the system to move forward in the way that it was designed to move forward. Not with a rush to judgment, not with jumping to conclusions, but with restraint and with dignity and with the respect that this system and this process deserves and that the family deserves. So with that, we are set for January 7th for an arraignment. That's the next court date. And that's all I have to say at this point. There may be more at some other point, but today we're going to rest on where we stand procedurally, which is this was the continuance of arraignment. Nothing happened today substantively. We'll be back for an arraignment in the same department on the 7th of January. We'll see you then.
So, Julia, Alan Jackson taking a little bit of time there to give a brief statement to media following today's court proceedings. So we'll have to see what kind of impact Alan Jackson will make on this case as this case moves forward. We know he has represented Kevin Spacey, Harvey Weinstein, and even Karen Reed in the murder trial that she went through and the retrial that we broadcasted here on the network here at Court TV. So we'll see what impact he has as this investigation and case continues to unfold and eventually probably heads to trial.
Absolutely. Cody Thomas, thank you so much for bringing us all of the details from today. Let's turn now to our power panel. We have in studio with us tonight former Deputy Chief of Investigations for Gwinnett County and at the District Attorney's Office there, Curtis Clemens is with us. And joining us remotely, criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Marie Pereira, and former homicide and prosecutor and author of the upcoming book that's available for pre-order, Mothers, Murders, and Motivation. We have Jarrett Ferrantino with us. Good to have you all on our expert panel. And I'm going to start with you, Curtis. Based on your experience as a law enforcement officer and, of course, so many different ranks that you held there in Gwinnett County, tell me what your opinion is on where this case goes next.
Well, you know, my opinion may be a little controversial, but I don't think this case will ever see the light of day in a trial. I think there will probably be a plea deal made, and he will probably spend the rest of his life in a mental health facility dealing with his drug addiction.
Former prosecutor Marie Pereira, what do you think about the speedy arraignment being waived today? Is that the same as waiving your right to a speedy trial?
It's similar, and I think it was a very prudent and strategic move on the part of Alan Jackson, because like he said, this is a very serious case with complex legal issues that require analysis before he moves forward. So he has to determine what is the mental status of his client. And all of these rumors circulating around about him having a fight at a party and his dad was screaming from the top of his lungs, people were angry, setting up already a motive. So as an attorney, he's responsible to investigate. And then his history of drug abuse. Was he taking drugs? How close to the drug abuse was this event? So there's so much for him to figure out. I think it was wise for him to take a pause so he can further assess and investigate before he jumps to a conclusion. But I don't think that there's going to be any plea deal in this situation. I disagree with my esteemed co-panelists because at the end of the day, life in prison without parole, maybe there's something else that happened in that house because of what Alan Jackson said. Complex legal. It's not like, okay, he was a drug addict and he flipped out. I don't think so. We have to wait for it.
All right, Jarrett, let's see if you have the tiebreaker on this one. You were a former homicide prosecutor for 20 years. What's your opinion of this case and what's going to happen next?
I don't think Curtis's opinion is controversial. I think it's a little premature. I think we're going to see a very different Alan Jackson here. Right now, they have to spend the holiday season having his client evaluated. They need to understand Nick's mental state. Before he can even indicate whether he's guilty or innocent for an arraignment, they have to have him evaluated. And that's why he asked for the arraignment to be moved. There's no doubt through Christmas, he's going to be talking to psychiatrists and psychologists and reverse engineering Nick's life.
What are Curtis law enforcement officers still looking for at this point? We saw that video that Cody showed us from the New York Post of a strolling down the sidewalk, essentially, Nick Reiner. What were you thinking when you saw that video?
Well, I think from a law enforcement perspective, we got to look at what was his state of mind. And of course, with any case, you got to have evidence, you got to have motive, you got to have the intent. There's a lot of things that are in play here in this case. And yeah, there will need to be some deep digging in this case to figure out what brought it to this horrific end on Sunday evening. But we have got to be thorough. Investigators have to be very thorough in their investigation. But again, it may be premature, but I do think, you know, Hollywood is a different place. So I think, you know, this in the end may be a plea deal. I'm going to stand on that.
You got a lot of recognizable names in this case. You heard Cody talking about the Conan O'Brien party, which is going to be big, I believe. Marie Pereira, can you weigh in on that part of it? The Conan O'Brien party, but also that clip that was played from years ago when he was on tour, essentially, with his father and this project that they worked on together.
You know, it's such a sad thing what happened to that family. And I think the situation at Conan O'Brien's house, the allegations is not working in his favor, because if in fact he had a big blowout out at the party and him and his dad were at it to the point where his mom and dad had to leave, it shows a little bit of premeditation and anger. And that's not a good look for him at all if they're choosing the mental health aspect. It shows you had a fight with your dad. Maybe you went home and he was like, get the hell out my house. You in my guest house and you're trying to disrespect me, you're out. And then that's what led to it. It doesn't help him if those allegations are true. I think there's a lot we have to wait for. You might think I'm out of the box with this. That might even be a situation of self-defense. The way Alan Jackson said, there's a lot of complex issues. We don't know all the facts. I think there could be a lot coming. Because just because it was a homicide, it doesn't mean it was unjustifiable. We have to wait.
Jared, what do you think about that approach from the defense? I mean, there are a lot of things that have been swirling as possibilities. Whether or not there's going to be an issue with competency for this defendant, if there's going to be an issue with an insanity plea. Many things could happen between now and when we get to that arraignment in January, Jared.
Well, there's no doubt. And I've dealt with these kind of cases, but in California, the insanity bar is so high. And that's why looking at that video of Nick heading toward his parents' house, and we know that at 4 a.m. he secured a hotel room 15 minutes away. Pre and post murder behaviors, these deliberate behaviors, if he hung curtains over the windows, if he tried to clean himself up, these are intentional acts. Even the killing itself, where it's being reported they were killed in their beds and their throats were slashed. Deliberate behaviors, not someone who is out of control of intentional conduct. That's the kind of thing that we call those insanity killers. Good luck saying you're crazy when you knew to travel there, get out of Dodge, and then put sheets over your windows. That's the kind of stuff why pre and post behavior is so important in assessing someone's mental state at that point.
So many details continue to come out, and it is helpful to break it down with all of you. Thanks to you so much for your opinions. We are going to step aside. We do have a programming note, rather, for this case, the Reiner family murders. It's a Court TV special we are going to be airing on Friday night, digging into everything that has come out in this case. 8 p.m. Eastern, Court TV lead anchor Vinnie Politan is going to take us into the investigation, along with field reporter Cody Thomas, who is there at the scene of the crime in Los Angeles. And also, keep in mind, we have paused the deliberation clock in California. It's still going. And this is in the case of California versus Maya Hernandez. That jury deliberation had been happening all day. This is the second day, more than 8 hours. And they've actually gone home for the day. And they're going to pick up deliberations tomorrow. But next, we're going to take you to Ohio, where a trial has been going on. A star witness was on the stand testifying for the state in the case against Paul Hicks. But can the jury trust him? We'll get into his testimony after the break.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, a Hollywood icon and his wife stabbed to death and their own son charged with their murders. Our teams are live with the latest in the murders of Rob and Michele Reiner.
Closing Arguments tonight at 8, 7 Central, only on Court TV.
I'm going to ask you a lot of personal questions.
From the crime scene to the courtroom, this is Victim to Verdict.
Everyone has this heightened sense of anticipation. We are following a once cold case out of Ohio where a husband was the prime person of interest, but there were no charges in his estranged wife's drowning death for 24 years. Paul Hicks is accused of knocking his wife, Regina Hicks, unconscious before putting her in the passenger seat of her own car and then driving it into a pond where she drowned. Paul Hicks was charged after his close friend came forward to say he wants to tell the truth about what he really witnessed back in 2001. And that close friend, who is now struggling with health issues, Stephen Gates, he took the stand today. He's the star witness for the state, no doubt, and he requested that he not be recorded by the media in any way. But we do have a rough transcript of his testimony. So let's get into the best evidence presented during his testimony today. Here's what our court of opinion team chose. First up, Steve Gates' testimony about the last time he saw the victim, Regina Hicks, alive. And here are some quotes from that. The prosecutor asked him, once Regina arrived at your property, what happened? And Steve Gates said they started arguing. And while they were arguing, I went out the main door. Prosecutor, what did you see when you returned? Gates said, I remember the driver window was down. I remember looking in the car and I saw Regina crumpled up on the passenger passenger side floor. The prosecutor asked, where was the defendant? Gates said, outside the passenger door. And Paul said to me, dude, she's blank dead. Let's bring back in our guest power panel, Curtis Clemens, Marie Pereira, and Jarrett Ferrantino. Marie Pereira, let's start with you on this one. What's your opinion on that part of the evidence? This is a witness who has full immunity, and he's the only reason we are here at a trial now.
I think it's very powerful testimony, him saying, dude, she's blank, blank dead, and him being an eyewitness to her in the vehicle, and that's where she ended up being found, drowned in the pond. But again, that's just his word. Someone who was given immunity more than 2.5 decades ago. And what kind of relationship did they have afterwards? Does he have a motive to lie? Is he coming here to lie on him because maybe they had some sort of external past beef? All of that is going to come into play. That testimony is not the best evidence, although it is the evidence. There are problems with that because it's a he say.
Jared, what's your opinion on this case and this witness on the stand who, as Marie points out, is under full immunity?
Well, the fact that he's under full immunity, Julia, is significant. That gives him a bias or a motive to tell a story. This is a long delayed trial, 24 years. Gates sang a different tune. Now he wants to tell the truth. The real issue is it just a he said situation against Hicks, or is there DNA and corroborating evidence to support what he's saying? That's the problem. There wasn't DNA of Hicks in the car to help corroborate with what Gates is saying. See, when you have a witness that has motivation or change their story, you always want to buttress that with maybe, hey, he has a health risk. He doesn't want to die with a lie on his soul. And by the way, Hicks's DNA is in the car. You don't have that here, and that's a problem. So the jury has to take a leap of faith with Mr. Gates here, and it's not an extraordinary leap because they're looking at him, they're assessing him, but when you lied in the past, it hurts you.
Yeah, and you're right. DNA is typically what we see break open these cold cases, and that's why we land in a courtroom after many years, but that's simply not the case here. Curtis, I want to get your take on this other portion of Steve Gates's testimony. And this focuses in on Paul Hicks's actions at the pond, according to Steve Gates. So he told this jury that Paul says, follow me, and he was driving Regina's car. And Gates says he followed him down towards the pond, and he says all he remembers, this should have been at nighttime and it was pretty dark, and he said all he remembers is seeing taillights up in the air. The prosecutor said the taillights were from what car? Gates responded that it was Regina's car. Paul Hicks was muddy, and he said he was kind of in shock. Paul came out of the pond wet and got into the car with me. Paul made a phone call, left her a voicemail, and something along the lines of saying, where the blank are you at? Come pick this kid up. Yeah, keep in mind, the child that they shared was with them at the time sleeping. And Stephen Gates goes on to say, Paul said to me, you're involved. And in hindsight, this witness says, I was just a dumb kid at the time. I didn't know what I was doing. I just remember the threats over the years to me and my family and my cattle. I mean, this is serious stuff, Curtis. This is him laying it out for this jury, and it almost explains what happened and why he kept silent. What's your opinion on where the defense should go after this?
Well, as far as the defense goes, I think they are incredibly brilliant in setting up this defense where they're basically not doing much to defend him, or they are setting up a great reason for him to set up an appeal on a later date. Because what's happening here, when you look at what Stephen Gates has said, you know, the jury has to take that into consideration. Why have you waited 24 years to come forward with this information? What part did you play in that? And of course, as Jared said, he has immunity. So that's something that's going to be on the jury's mind. They have to consider that.
Marie Pereira, do you agree this is brilliant? Because we do know now that the defense is not putting on any case. They did not bring in Paul Hicks to the stand. They are going to rely on closing arguments that are happening on Friday.
I don't know that it's brilliant. I think what's brilliant is what Jared said. I don't want to die with a lie. I love that. I get that part. And they don't have to put on a case because the burden is on the state to prove each and every element of this crime beyond a reasonable doubt. So if they feel like that best evidence is shaky for all the reasons that Jared said and my other esteemed guest said, he has reason to lie, he got immunity, maybe all they need to do is sit down and let the state do their job and prove this 25-year-old case beyond a reasonable doubt. Because someone didn't want to die with a lie? Nah.
It is really what the prosecution has in terms of bolstering Stephen Gates's testimony. I was surprised, Jarrett, that I didn't hear the defense suggest a money motive, suggest that he had any ill will towards Paul Hicks. They didn't really have any motivation for him to lie other than the fact that he had lied in the past, because police asked him all these same questions in 2001, but he never came forward with anything.
Well, they're going to mention that, Julia, in closing, I think. You know, I always, and trial lawyers tie these cases and witnesses' testimony to a story. And the things that Gates has said, my family was threatened, my property was threatened, I was a dumb kid. Those are things that could speak to the jury and they say, hey, look, I did stupid things when I was a kid. I told lies when I was a kid. My family's been threatened or I had a concern and I didn't come forward. Those are the kind of things the prosecution has to highlight. If I'm the defense attorney in this case, I'm just beating the drum of it's 24 years and now we hear what he claims is the truth. And if you believe that, that takes us to beyond a reasonable doubt. I got a bridge in Brooklyn, we'll sell you.
Let's take a listen back to something that the officer on the stand the day before Stephen Gates took the stand. Here's the cross-examination. Give us a little insight into how this defense cross-examined this witness who we couldn't record, but take a listen back to that.
As you sit here today, you can't rule out that he lied in his proffer to the prosecutors, can you?
No, sir.
Okay. And you can't rule out, as you sit there, that he's going to lie to these people tomorrow.
I would hope not, sir.
You can't rule out that he is going to lie tomorrow.
I can't. No, sir, I can't.
Curtis Clemens, from your law enforcement background, talk about what this means for these officers who have been investigating this case perhaps for 24 years.
Well, you know, it's going to bring it either to a conclusion or it's something that, you know, much like, you know, Mr. Gates, is something he doesn't want to take to his grave, you know, as he gets older and his health is failing. Having been a detective for many years, having worked the case and you pour your heart into a case and you reach that dead end and you have no more leads and then something like this comes, it reinvigorates you and gives you hope for closure. And so it's up to the jury at this point, once they receive that case, you know, where it's going to go. If he's convicted, the detectives as well have closure as well as the family. If he's not convicted, the problems go on.
Up to the jury, and on Friday they are going to hear those closing arguments. Our panel is sticking with us. We've got to get to a break. When we come back, we are going to go beyond the gavel, breaking down the biggest true crime cases across the country. And today, all eyes are on Rhode Island as the suspect in the Brown University shooting over the weekend is still at large. Day 5 of the manhunt is still going. Let's go beyond the gavel. Cases that haven't made it into a courtroom with a trial yet, but are capturing attention during the investigation. And we are keeping our eyes on Providence, Rhode Island for that investigation there, following new developments in the Brown University shooting investigation. And this just moments ago, coming into our newsroom from our team that's there on the ground. Police in the area, according to our Matt Johnson, who is there, just sped off with lights and sirens and are congregating. There's no word on the reason for this activity, but we will bring you a live report in our next hour. This is the case of 2 students who was shot and killed. 9 others were wounded when a gunman entered their classroom and opened fire. This all happened last Saturday, and a suspect is still not in custody after that manhunt now enters its 5th day. Today, investigators released these new pictures of another individual they want to talk to. They say this person was in proximity to the person of interest that they are still trying to find. And we have that video of the person of interest that was released earlier this week. They also show this person of interest running from the scene. Perhaps a lot of questions still remain about the timing of some of this video. Authorities there in Providence, Rhode Island, they've been holding a news conference, and just a few hours ago, the chief of police said, again, there is that second person that they are looking into. Take a listen.
We have video footage of that determines to us and the detectives that can tell that this person was in the vicinity where the subject of interest was that we wanted that we actually have an interest on. Close enough that we feel that we need to speak with them to find out what because videos don't speak. If you think about it, I wish the video could speak, and then I'll have the answers that we need to, so that we can continue on this investigation. So we're trying to find out exactly what it is, and that's why we need to speak with them.
Let's bring back in our panel of experts, Curtis Clemens, Marie Pereira, and Jarrett Ferrantino with us. We've got Law and Order on deck today. And Curtis, I'm going to go to you for the order part of this. Talk about your opinion on where police are in this investigation. No doubt, frustrations are high.
Yes. Don't want to second guess, another law enforcement agency. I'm sure they're doing everything they possibly can to bring this suspect into custody. However, with a murder investigation, the first 48 to 72 hours are critical, and we are already in day 5 since the 2 homicides. So it's critical that local law enforcement work well with the FBI, and hopefully they have narrowed down the scope of a potential suspect. My guess is there'll probably be someone local to the area, so they would fit right in.
Marie Pereira, what's your opinion on this one? We now have the police and law enforcement officials that are there in Rhode Island saying that they have this person who was in proximity to their person of interest. The language there, is that key here?
I think they might be saying there was maybe more than one person involved in the execution of this heinous crime. But I'm going to piggyback on what Curtis said. This is an investigation, right? And they can't just come out and tell the public everything they have. Because if they do, then that will give the person who may be the suspect close to being apprehended doing something to avoid apprehension. So they may be acting like they don't know exactly who it is, and they're asking for the public help based on the videos and the images, but they know more. And in order for them to preserve the integrity of their case, they have to hold back a little bit. Sort of like what happened in the Koberger case. That police department was accused of incompetence, being rinky-dink, Keystone cops, but all the while they had more information than what they were giving.
I'm glad you raised the Idaho 4, because that is something that this feels reminiscent of, because we have a university, it's close to the holidays, it was unsolved. It was so shocking that these 4 students had been stabbed inside of an apartment, and it took a while. Jarrett, what's your opinion on this one and where we are in the investigation?
Well, I agree with Curtis, having done a lot of investigations over the course of my career and been a part of them, that 24 to 72 hours is typically the golden rule. But anybody still doing this will tell you that that is expanded because of door cams and surveillance footage and all of the things and the drudgery that goes on in reviewing that evidence. So what used to be street canvassing is now big technology processing, so you're expanding that. The public has to be patient, unfortunately, because it's not only the goal to get it done fast, the goal is to get it done right. And Chief Perez said, videos don't talk. And that person of interest was in proximity of our suspect here. That says to me, there was a conversation between the two. So sometimes I try to read between the lines of what people are saying. It says to me that he was more than in close proximity. He was talking with the individual.
That is an interesting opinion. I do want to get some of the interviews that we've gotten from people there on the ground, just getting the public's opinion there in Rhode Island. Let's take a listen and talk about it on the other side.
I feel like this is sort of a loss of innocence in a lot of ways in that people just don't know how to react. They don't know if they're safe. Took a chance today coming out because I wanted to bear witness and to see things for myself, and left some flowers over by the Van Wickle gates, and hoping that just being here will be part of the healing process.
Your reaction? I mean, we're on day 5, still no suspect, and there's all that video of him.
Yeah, that's disappointing. I used to work on Thayer Street many years ago and grew up on the east side, and it's very disturbing, and I'm kind of at a loss for words when it comes to why more hasn't been done, perhaps.
Curtis Clemens, there's been a lot of pressure on these officials. They've been giving daily press conferences. A lot of questions about why there's not more video that's been released. Is the pressure warranted?
Well, from the public standpoint, yes. You want your local law enforcement to represent you and solve these cases because you want to get literally a murderer off the streets. But as was said earlier by Jared, you also want to make sure it's done right. And so no law enforcement agent is going to lay out all their cards to the public, again, because they might notify the perpetrator of what their movements are and what they're doing, and that gives them an opportunity to get away, and that's something we don't want.
I think we all certainly hope there's more going on behind the scenes than we are hearing. Our thanks to our power panel. You're staying with us. We have to get to a break. But coming up, we're going to get their hot takes on the cold facts. Our panel giving you their strongest opinions on today's biggest headlines. A jury weighs the case against a woman who left her kids in a hot car, killing one of them. And custody drama plays out in court in the wake of a teen's cruise ship death. And the Slenderman stabber may be back on her way to a psychiatric hospital. We'll talk about all of it on the other side.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, a Hollywood icon and his wife stabbed to death and their own son charged with their murders. Our teams are live with the latest in the murders of Rob and Michele Reiner.
Closing Arguments tonight at 8, 7 Central, only on Court TV.
A Microsoft executive gunned down. Now his ex and her new husband are charged with his murder.
A social media sensation, now a suspected killer.
She wrote a children's book about her husband's death. Now she's accused of killing him.
In California, the jurors continue deliberating the fate of mother Maya Hernandez there, who left her kids in a hot car while getting cosmetic filler. This killed one of them. The jury deliberated more than 8 hours today before going home. They are going to continue deliberations tomorrow, but they did send a note in this case. Now, the defense says this was involuntary manslaughter only, but she is charged with second-degree murder. And the jury asked the judge what happens if they can't agree on count 1, second-degree murder. The judge told them to go back and continue their deliberations. So what's going to happen out in California? Let's bring in our guest panel. They've each got 25 seconds on the clock. Curtis Clemens, Marie Pereira, and Jared Ferrantino. Marie Pereira, I want to start with you on this one.
I think the fact that she turned the air conditioning on and didn't know that that type of car turns off the air conditioning if the car is not running, then that became a problem. I think it shows that she didn't intend to leave them in that hot car, and she didn't intend. So if she didn't have the intent, we're talking about manslaughter here. The fact that she put the AC on and it was the car that shut off. That's what happened.
Jared Ferrantino, what is your take on this one? Do you think this jury could be hung?
Yes, I think the bridge between negligence and conscious disregard is long, narrow, and choppy, and swaying as you try to get across it. I've done cases like this. The defense fell on the negligence sword. They acknowledged what she did was wrong. They say it does not rise to the level of murder. She would have no way disregarded a known risk to those children, and that's why they're hung.
Curtis Clemens, what is your take on this one? Why do we keep seeing children dying in hot cars with all of the public service announcements?
It's a sad situation, but this is a new generation out here today that's raising literally kids raising kids. And this is what we have right here. But in this particular case, I don't think the jury is going to come back with the second-degree murder. I do believe it's going to be involuntary manslaughter. She didn't have the intent, and you got to be able to prove that. And the The defense came forward and said, yes, we acknowledge that there was some negligence here. And that is what we're offering, and I think that's what they're going to get from a jury.
We will see what the jury does in that case when they come back tomorrow. Let's move to our second headline. This is one where the stepmother of a teen killed on a cruise ship last month was back in court today for a hearing with her ex-husband. This is Chantel Hudson Kepner. She has custody of the two children she shares with her ex, Thomas Hudson. Now, her stepdaughter, Anna Kepner, is the one who died mysteriously on that Carnival cruise, and one of their children has been identified as a possible suspect in that case. Now, the husband here, ex-husband, he filed an emergency petition for custody of their youngest child after what happened on that cruise, but it was denied. Today's hearing was a contempt, for the previous custody order. So they went back and forth over the custody, brought up things prior between these parents, but no real discussion about the cruise, and still no one has been charged in Anna Kepner's death. Let's get back to our panel. Jared Ferrantino, what do you think about this one?
I think the absence of the 16-year-old in those proceedings speaks volumes. That is the individual that is the suspect in Anna Kepner's murder. I think that he was kept deliberately off the stand. He's certainly of age that he could have and probably should have testified. Someone is protecting that individual and his Fifth Amendment rights. They're doing right by him, but it's because the suspicion remains with him in the case.
Marie Pereira, let's get your take. No charges yet in this case on someone who is young, a minor.
I think it was problematic that they put all those kids in the same room. We're talking about one girl and two teenage boys with hormones going on. And I think there was foul play. And I really don't want to blame the mom, but it was a poor choice to do that. And when they asked her, well, how did you figure out the living arrangements? She said, oh, the travel agent suggested it. How about not putting your daughter in the room with two teenage boys?
Yeah, Curtis Clemens, let's get to you. What's your take on this investigation and where it stands?
Where it stands right now is it's completely up in the air. If you've ever worked with the feds and how they investigate cases, they will make sure they have an airtight case before they ever bring forth any charges. So without any charges against this juvenile, there's not going to be anything that they can do to curtail that juvenile's movements and who he has contact with for the most part, unless the court intervenes. And in this particular case, I think the court needs to intervene and maybe in some way, for the safety of the child, take him into custody.
All right, thank you all for your takes on that one. Let's get to our third story of the day. This one involves the young woman in the Slenderman stabbing. She won't be contesting the effort to revoke her release. Morgan Geyser cut off her GPS monitoring bracelet and fled from her Madison group home. This was back on November 22nd. There's the video of it there. Now, police arrested her at a truck stop outside of Chicago the next day. She was then ordered, well, this year we know that she was ordered to a state psychiatric hospital, and she was released to this group home from that order. Now, the State Department of Health Services filed a petition after this jailbreak, essentially, group home break, seeking to revoke her release, and we now know her defense team is not going to be fighting it. Jared Ferrantino, let me start with you.
The state was against releasing her to that group home from the beginning. From what I have researched in this case, it's sad. This crime happened when she was 12. The goal of the system is to punish and rehabilitate. It's clear this young woman's struggles continue, and she is in no position to be in a group home and should remain placed in the facility she's going back to.
Curtis Clemens, get your take on whether she should have been released.
I agree with Jared. I don't think she should have been released. She is still a danger not only to the community, but to herself. And if she was to be released, she needs to go into state prison, where I believe her attitude would change. She's still a very manipulative person.
Marie Pereira, final thoughts on this one.
I agree with the manipulation that Curtis said, and it blows my mind. She ran away, basically, cut off her bracelet with a 43-year-old man. What the hell did she run away for? And what did she want to do with this guy that she couldn't do at the group home?
Marie Pereira, leaving some time on the clock for us. Thank you all for your strong opinions on this one. Marie Pereira, Jared Ferrantino, and Curtis Clemens here in studio. We appreciate you all.